Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So if you've ever struggled with a relationship in your life, or if you felt unsure about how to have a healthy and sustainable relationship, then hopefully this video might help you out. Now, I recently spoke to John and Julie Gottman, who are two world-famous relationship experts and psychologists, to learn more about the common mistakes that people make in relationships and how I can improve my own as well.
If the relationships were high in quality and the marriage really made them happy, they would live 10 to 15 years longer.
So in this video, we're going to talk about the 7 most important habits to develop to build stronger relationships. And these are from the book, The 7-Day Love Prescription, which is the book that we are discussing in this episode of Book Club, the ongoing series where I distill and discuss summaries and highlights from some of my favorite books. Let's just get into it. Habit number 1, the connection bid habit. So picture this, 130 newlywed couples, each in the honeymoon phase, visited the Love Lab to spend a weekend doing their usual activities. They watched TV shows, they cooked, they chatted, and they even had arguments. But while they went about their usual business, the Gottman's team of researchers observed and analyzed every detail of their interactions. And the idea behind the study was they were going to observe all these details, and then many years later, they were going to follow up and see what details predicted the outcome of those relationships. And the research soon noticed a pattern that they called bids for connection. Now, a bid for connection is a person's attempt to connect with another person, like looking for their attention or their affection or their support. For example, in a romantic relationship, a bid for connection might be a gentle touch on the arm. In a family context, a bid for connection might be, you're sitting down at the dining table and your sibling releases a big sigh. That's a bid for connection. They want you to ask them what's going on. And in friendship, a bid for connection might be your housemate asking you when you get home from work, hey, how was your day? Maybe they actually care about your day, maybe they don't, but it's a bid for connection where they're trying to initiate an interaction. And these bids can seem like really small acts, but they actually build the foundation building blocks for emotional health in relationships. So first, recognizing bids and then responding to them in a sensible and appropriate way is the first habit that we're trying to cultivate to build better relationships. And generally, there are 3 ways of responding to a bid for connection. We've got turning toward, turning away, and turning against. So firstly, there's turning toward. So let's imagine a context where you've got a married couple, let's call them Harry and Ginny, and they're like 30 years into their marriage, and then at some point they're just chilling at home on the sofa, like reading a book or something. And then Harry says to Ginny, hey honey, look, there's a robin outside the window. Now at that point, Harry has made a bid for connection with Ginny. Now Ginny can respond to it in one of 3 ways. She can turn towards the bid. So for example, oh, that's cool, like what an interesting bird. Maybe she doesn't actually care about the bird, but like she's responded to the bid for connection. She's recognized that it's a bid, and it's not about the bird, it's about the fact that Harry is trying to connect with her in that moment. The second option is turning away, which is just ignoring the bid broadly. So continuing reading her book and ignoring the comment because Ginny's thinking, I don't really care about the bird, like who cares, I'm just gonna continue reading my book. But the third option and the most destructive response is to turn against. So in that context, Ginny might say, Harry, mate, why are you telling me about this bird? Can't you see I'm in the middle of something? And that is not a very nice way to respond to a bid for connection, obviously. Now, if we come back to the Love Lab study, this is what John and Julie Gottman found as the results of the study.
So when we followed couples, the 17 couples who divorced one another after 6 years after the wedding, when we look back six years earlier, they had turned toward these bids only 33% of the time, whereas the couples who were still together 6 years earlier had turned toward the bids 86% of the time. Huge difference.
Oh, by the way, if you're interested in the specific questions that I've been using to review my relationship and manage my relationship for the last 2 years, then that'll be linked down below. You can download them and try it with your own partner if you happen to be in a relationship. I've recommended this list of questions to so many of my friends, and they've all basically said, oh wow, we had that specific structured conversation and we learned so much about ourselves that we just hadn't learned before. And this is even friends who've been in a relationship for like 10 plus years. So check out that list. It's linked completely for free down below. Habit number 2, the Quizzical Habit. Now, a little while ago, a couple of videos called Can Two Strangers Fall in Love with 36 Questions went viral on YouTube. The premise of the video was that these 2 strangers would be invited into a room. They would then ask each other this list of 36 pre-specified questions. Questions like, when was the last time you cried and what are you most afraid of? And then when finishing asking the questions, they would look into each other's eyes for a few minutes and then they would see how they feel about each other. And a lot of the time, these 2 strangers really did bond over these 36 questions. And a plausible reason for this might well be that the questions actually helped foster some sort of connection. Now, these 36 questions were in fact created by psychology professor Arthur Aron. Now, Arthur did this experiment in which he paired university students that didn't know each other, and he got some of them to solve a problem together, and he got some of them to answer these 36 questions together. And unsurprisingly, he found that the students who answered the 36 questions felt more close and more connected than the students who solved a problem together. So what is so special about these 36 questions and how do they bring people closer? Well, the easy answer is that these 36 are all big, open-ended questions. Now, at the start of our relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic, we tend to feel very curious about the other person. They're a new person, we've just met them, them, and so we have all these questions about what they're like and what their background was like, what their childhood was like, what they enjoy. But then over time, the problem is that we become a lot less curious about the other person. And this is pretty natural because as we get to know someone better, we have this feeling that we kind of know them pretty well already. And so we actually end up not listening to them as much as we would like or as much as we should. Now, psychologists and relationship therapists have a term for this, which is closeness communication bias. It basically refers to the idea that as wonderful as familiarity and intimacy is, it's also a double-edged sword because the more familiar we are with someone, the more complacent it makes us in our interactions with them. And so this is the basis of the second habit in the book, which is to ask big questions. The idea is that we want to stay as curious about a partner as possible, even if we've been with them for a very, very, very long time, because there's always more to uncover, and that is one of the things that makes people feel closer and connected. Now, one of the habits that's most improved my relationship that I've actually been doing with my girlfriend for the last 2 years is a regular relationship review, and this is based on habit number 7 in the book. And perhaps unsurprisingly, the software that we use for our relationship review is Notion, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. I use Notion for a bunch of stuff. I use it for basically every single thing in the business. We use it for team, project management. We use it for planning out these videos and the titles and the thumbnails and all of our internal business processes. But I also use Notion a lot in my personal life for tracking my goals, for doing my annual reviews, and for doing these regular relationship reviews with my girlfriend. I've been using Notion for all this stuff since 2019, so literally 4 years of using Notion literally every single day. And they've recently launched a new feature called Notion Projects, which is a dedicated project management suite directly built inside of Notion that also allows you to use the power of AI, and it's pretty awesome. The most elaborate way in which we use Notion is for our entire video production cadence. So we've got these YouTube videos, we've got the podcast, we've got all the social media stuff, and it's all in a massive database with like multiple interconnected databases, and it's amazing for managing the entire team that we work with to make these videos and everything else in the business. So if you're not yet using Notion for whatever reason, and you want a powerful project management solution that's seamlessly integrated with Docs and Wiki and everything else that you do in your team, and you want all of that inside a beautiful connected workspace where you've got notes and tasks and you can organize your life's work, then click the link in the video description and that will let you sign up to Notion completely for free and try out Notion Projects as well. So thank you so much, Notion, for sponsoring this video. Habit number 3, the gratitude habit. Okay, so we've seen so far that the habit of curiosity and genuine listening and asking open-ended questions can create connection. But through their Love Lab Research Institute, the Gottmans have identified these 4 specific things that destroy connection, and they call them the 4 horsemen.
So these are the great big predictors that can predict with over 90% accuracy 6 years down the road, where are you going to be? You're going to be together happily with your partner, unhappily, or will you already be separated and divorced?
So the 4 horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism involves attacking the other person's character or personality rather than addressing a specific issue or behavior. So for example, saying you never help with the housework, you're so selfish and lazy, or words to that effect, would be a criticism because it's an attack of the character itself. Contempt is showing disdain or disrespect for the other person. Defensiveness is where someone refuses to take responsibility for their own action and instead deflects or tries to blame the other person. And then stonewalling is what happens when a partner withdraws from the conversation or the interaction, either physically or emotionally. Now, the good news is that there are a lot of things that we can do to help avoid the 4 horsemen, and one of the big ones is to just say thank you more often. Now, in long-term relationships, it's super easy to take things for granted, and we often forget to actively appreciate the things that our friends or our siblings or our parents or our partners do for us. Now, saying thank you generally involves 2 steps. The first is to train your brain to notice the positives rather than the negatives, and this is the idea of catch them doing something right. This is also a good strategy for leading and managing a team. You want to it's easy to just look at the things people are doing wrong, but actually you want to focus on what are they doing right that you can give them gratitude and appreciation for. And then the second thing is to say thank you with sincerity. Now this seems often weird, especially as a dude, especially as a Brit, where it's like sincerity is a bit like cringe at times, but genuine sincerity makes the other person feel so much better. So if someone makes you coffee, for example, rather than hey, thanks, which is like a very chill way of saying thank you. Potentially, you could try something a little bit more sincere, like, thank you so much for making the coffee every morning. I love waking up to the smell of coffee and the sound of you pottering away in the kitchen. It really makes a great start to my day. Something like that. Bit intense, but like that's what these guys are recommending, that, we've got to get better at saying thank you and showing appreciation with sincerity rather than trying to be chill about it like we often try and do. Habit number 4, the admiration habit. Now the 4th habit is another strategy that helps prevent the 4 horsemen from charging in, and that is to give a real and genuine compliment. Now over time, it's easy for us to forget to notice the qualities that our partner or friends or family have that we admire. But admiration isn't something that happens by default. We need to practice it, and it's also the foundation of a healthy and respectful relationship. As the Gottmans write in their book, couples who take the time every day to notice and hold in mind what they admire about the person they've chosen to weather the slings and arrows of life with are the ones who succeed long term. Admiration isn't something that just happens, it's something you do. Actively admiring the other person, appreciating them not just for what they do, but for who they are, is like air in a life raft. You float above the waves even when they get rough. In fact, the Gottmans actually found that the ratio of positive to negative interactions during a conflict is a really important determinant of relationship success. The better you are at focusing on the positive, especially when you're in a disagreement, the more likely that your relationship is to be happy and long-lasting.
And we discovered that the masters, even in conflict, had 5 times as much positive emotion as negative. Whereas the disasters, that ratio of positive to negative, averaged 0.8. It's just a little bit more negativity than positivity.
So one thing I'm trying in my life is to try my best to actively notice the positive qualities that my partner or friends or family have, and actually sincerely express my appreciation and admiration for those qualities. It's hard, I feel a bit cringe at times, but that's pretty good results so far. Habit number 5, the overcommunication habit. So in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry and Ron go through this big kerfuffle in their relationship and friendship together. They're like the best friends, but then there's this big misunderstanding. Harry's name gets taken out of the goblet. Ron thinks that Harry put his name in the goblet. Harry's like, no, I didn't. Ron gets upset. Harry gets upset. They don't talk to each other for a very long time. And instead of actively communicating their feelings with one another, both of them start to give each other the silent treatment and start withdrawing inwards to protect their ego. And it's just not a good vibe all around. And the key takeaway from this little digression is related to the 5th relationship habit that the Gottmans talk about in the book, which is to communicate what you need and how you're feeling in your relationships. This is something I really struggle with, but it's a work in progress. We're all trying to learn here. We're all trying to improve over time. Now, we often implicitly assume that the other person can read our minds or should know how we're feeling, or we just don't even know how we're feeling ourselves. But the truth is that no one, not even the most compassionate and empathetic person in the world, is a mind reader. And so it's very important to actually express what you need in a relationship and how you're feeling.
We emphasize you should bring up your needs as a positive need rather than a negative need. You ask for what you do want, not what you don't like or you resent. Don't bring that up, because that's going to sound like criticism. Instead, flip it on its head and say, I would love it if you clean the dishes 3 times a week. That would be such a big help to me.
Habit number 6, the hug habit. Okay, so the 6th habit is to reach out and touch. Now, a bunch of studies have shown that during the COVID pandemic, people experienced a significant decrease in physical touch, unsurprisingly, which led to increased feelings of loneliness and even affected our mental health. And this is just one of the data points that really shows how important physical intimacy and physical connection and physical touch is for us and for the people around us. And that's why this habit of reaching out and touching is important. It's important for our relationships, but it's also important for our own well-being. Now, obviously, in a romantic relationship, physical intimacy can take lots of different forms, like holding hands or hugging or cuddling or just sitting next to each other on the sofa. And these simple connections, it's small stuff, but apparently it can create this sense of connection and security. In friendships and family relationships, reaching out and touching might mean a high five or a pat on the back or a comforting hug if someone is in a time of need. And I've got this cool thing in the book, the magic of mini touch. It's nice because each of the chapters in this book, each of the habits have a little sort of mini practice that you can do. This one is like a checklist, can you kiss for 6 seconds or hug for 20 seconds or hold hands for as long as you like or trade a 10-minute massage or cuddle on the couch or put an arm around your partner, things like that. And you run these exercises, and in doing so, they're basically guaranteed to improve the quality of your relationship. And habit number 7 is the ritual habit. Now, in 2002, some researchers at the Sloan Center in UCLA did a groundbreaking study, and they wanted to see how modern couples juggle their daily routines and how they maintain their relationships. So they got a bunch of researchers to follow some families in their households. And this was a bit awkward initially because these families had researchers basically following them around and watching everything that they did, but apparently they got used to it after some time. So one of the key findings of this study was that couples only spent 10% of their time alone together. And the average couple had just 35 minutes of conversation per week. And it also turned out that most of that 35 minutes of conversation was about mundane household logistics rather than about anything deeper or more meaningful than that. And this wasn't just an issue with couples who had kids, it affected couples from all walks of life. And so one of the things they say really is that we're all guilty of letting the never-ending to-do list of life get in the way of nurturing our relationships. So what can we do about this? Well, this is where we get to the 7th habit, which is the ritual habit.
This is one of my favorite things to do, Ollie, is to create what we call rituals of connection. And rituals of connection are activities that you do together with your partner that are pre-designed, they're pre-planned, and they're agreed upon. So, for example, here are some rituals of connection. The way that you greet each other first thing in the morning when you wake up? Do you typically go out on a date one night a week? Or do you go out for brunch every Sunday?
The point is, in a long-term relationship, it's easy to stop paying attention to the relationship itself. Other concerns always seem more urgent and more important. And it's very easy to stop actually allocating the dedicated time in the week to catch up. And so one of the things that the Gottmans recommend in the book, and like basically everyone who I know who has a happy relationship does this, is declaring a fairly regular date night. And that's basically setting aside an evening every week to give yourself a chance to step away from the daily routine of life and to make sure that that is the sacred date night in the calendar. If you're not in a romantic relationship, you can use this ritual habit in other areas of life as well. Like, there's a classic epidemic of loneliness amongst people, in particular amongst like men apparently, where we struggle to like make friends and retain friendships and stuff because everyone is just so busy. But one thing I'm trying to do personally is to set up regular rituals. So Tuesday evenings for me are like social evening with friends kind of thing. We do Sunday brunches, me, my brother and my sister-in-law, and we invite whoever is around in London that day for our weekly brunch. And then with some of my friends from medical school, we do like once a quarter-ish. We do like a weekend getaway somewhere. And we're quite intentional about organizing those as far in advance as possible so that people can take time off and swap their night shifts. And it's these little rituals, these things that are regular things that are what sustain these relationships. Because otherwise, everyone's busy, everyone's life gets in the way, and you might think like, oh, why are you systemizing a relationship? But without systemizing a relationship and having some sort of ritualistic habit that keeps it running, it's just too easy to let it fall by the wayside. And that's a real shame because relationships are the most important thing in life. If you're interested in listening to the full interview that I did with John and Julie Gottman, then you can check that out on any podcast app. Just search Deep Dive Ali Abdaal and you'll find it. Or alternatively, you can check out the Deep Dive YouTube channel where you can watch the interview if you're interested in watching rather than listening. And if you like this video, you're gonna love this video over here, which is about probably the single best book I've ever read about relationships, called How to Not Die Alone by Logan Ury. So this is my summary of that video over there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.